The atmosphere in Project Zomboid is stellar. Despite its isometric point of view, this game can nail the depressing silence of a real bona fide apocalypse. Though, with the game being hardcore, many people are only able to enjoy the first week or so of the game without all of the cool erosion that takes place months down the line. So today, I thought I'd break away from the initial first week in its chaos and create a small group of mods with some sandbox settings to turn your average game into an awesome experience that throws you into the apocalypse where nature has fully taken over and you will be put to the test. I hope y'all enjoy. This is the mod that actually gave me this idea, and it's one of the coolest for an apocalypse vibe as well. The Barricaded World mod adds another factor when it comes to world erosion, which gives each window or door a chance to be broken or barricaded with a random material as time goes on. This is a nice separation from vanilla, where zombies are the only ones that can actually affect the state of windows and doors, which results in pretty clean looking homes even a year in. The number of windows affected also increases as time goes on, so the longer you survive, the more effects you will see. Seeing it in action is really the cherry on top for the erosion in the world, and frankly, it's hard to live without once you get used to the barricaded rundown homes. To add on to the desolate vibe of the world, we also have the Trash and Corpses mod. The title is pretty self-explanatory, but this litters the world with random bits of trash and corpses. And with the erosion in already ruined homes, it just adds another cool layer on top of everything else that you will probably miss once you go without. Another cool little thing is that you can forage and loot through the trash scattered throughout the world, which adds in a little factor of desperation should you need to resort to looting bottles and random critters from underneath the rotten cardboard and glass. And of course, we have a Last of Us themed texture pack. This mod changes some of the textures in the world, and it really does help with immersion coming across these broken and vandalized tiles, instead of the usual pristine pieces that never change despite a lot of time passing since the initial outbreak. Now usually this mod would look a little bit weird if you just decided to throw it in and start a weekend, but when you start in 6 months after the apocalypse, it really does fit in well. Overall, it's a small addition, but it adds a bunch of value to every broken and battered building interior you might come across in your travels. What's a good wasteland without environmental hazards? And that's exactly where the Toxic Fog mod comes in. What this does is make the fog and rain in your game toxic to humans and your health. This means that you will always need to keep an eye out for your next shelter should the toxic miasma decide to roll in. Aside from adding another threat, this mod also gives gas masks a very well-needed use, so you can keep one on hand for both practicality and aesthetic reasons. Also, another note, if you do pair this mod with the Barricaded World one, just keep in mind that safe rooms need to be airtight when the fog does roll in. So if there's a broken window or door, you might get some spillover with that toxic fog. Just keep that in mind. Of course, I had to include the crashed cars for this mod list. If you love the aesthetic of car pileups on the highway, this mod replaces all of the drab and boring burn car textures, and instead adds in a wonderfully destroyed wreck that you can even loot. There's nothing like coming across a pileup and looting through the broken wreckage for a small chance of supplies such as food or water. Overall, it's super freaking cool to come across. Scrap weapons are a staple in any apocalypse, especially ones that you can make from scratch. With loot being scarce, it would make sense that you would be able to start to get creative on ways to defend yourself from the undead threat. It also gives a good late game goal as well with building your own weapon forgery. This set of mods gives you the ability to fashion a bunch of weapons and armor from the scrap you come across on the daily. From pressurized shotguns to forged spears and swords, you'll find many different flavors of death, and there's nothing quite like running out in a full set of scrap armor with a freaking stop sign of death. Overall, this is one of my favorites, and I include it in almost every playthrough I have. Once you get used to the game, getting a working vehicle can be pretty easy, and it frankly trivializes the early game once you do get one. But if this is years into the apocalypse, it would make sense that getting a working vehicle should be a fully fledged project that you pour your blood, sweat, and tears into. So, this mod seeks to add in a bit of extra challenge for that. If you've ever played Cataclysm, this mod basically does that. So, a bunch of vehicles you come across normally will have random parts removed completely, from tires all the way to the engine. So the only way you can actually get a car is by Frankensteining your very own together from random parts you come across here and there. Overall, this gives a really cool apocalyptic goal to work towards, and once you do get it working, you better be sure to treat it well. Now, without the convenience of cars, having a cheap alternative is going to be needed, and this is exactly where Zuper Carts comes in. This mod adds in random shopping carts and trolleys into the loot tables of Knox County, which is the closest we can get to a vehicle in these trying times. It's super helpful to have a random cart to deposit loot into, and it's really damn cool to stroll through the empty streets with a shopping cart full of loot, but finding one will make looting runs a ton easier. Is finding a bag harder than you thought? Would you like to be able to fashion a quick bindle and bag from ripped sheets and makeshift rope? Well, the Improvised Backpacks mod solves just that. All it does is add in some early game makeshift bags that are pretty cheap with the cost. They can be really handy to have around when you're in a pinch. If you want to take your vehicular ambitions to the next level, aside from making one just work, Autotsar Tooling Atelier adds in an actual late game project. I mean, come on, is it really a post-apocalypse scenario without a super cool beefed up vehicle that resembles a Mad Max fantasy? Anyways, this mod allows you to modify a few select vehicles and evolve them into actual machines of death. Should you find these parts scattered through the world, you can add in many different things, such as chains on tires and bull bars, that should scatter the hordes pretty well. If you don't want to find the parts, you can simply make your own as well, should you have the metalworking skill and tools necessary. The Even Worse Searching mod really isn't for the faint of heart, as it makes looting a much more time-consuming process. But if you're a fan of the slow-paced nature, such as the long dark looting system, this might be for you. What this mod does is make the contents of every container unknown up until you actually interact and loot it. This means that combing through homes is going to take much more deliberation and a potential waste of daylight. But it also means that finding a can of beans is going to be all the more worth it. It also stops you from rushing points of interest, looting everything, and leaving with a horde on your back. With the lack of supplies, you're gonna need some cool ways to find and prepare sources of food, and Gourmet Revolution adds in some really cool features, with it adding a bunch of cool new recipes for food items and seeds for farming as well. But most importantly, this mod actually adds in a hunting mechanic, which can really help with acquiring food. So if you have a set of binoculars and a ranged weapon, you can go through the trees in hopes of bagging some big game animals. It's a really nice change of pace to actively hunt in the woods instead of just going to your normal grocery store and looting through that. Now that the mods are dealt with, we have some sandbox settings to help with the atmosphere as well. Firstly, we're going to change the world settings where we're going to disable water and electricity. After that, we should disable the house alarms and locked houses frequency. We're going to change the nights to pitch black so that flashlights and batteries are a very valuable resource. And then we're going to start 12 months into the apocalypse. Up next, we're going to set the erosion speed to very fast and nature's abundance to abundant. The chopper should also be disabled. Lastly, we have the loot rarity option, and I would set this to extremely rare to simulate the buildings already being looted and ravaged. With all these settings, you should have a really awesome setting to work with. Anyways, that's going to be it for my little mod list that should make Project Zomboid feel like a real apocalyptic wasteland. Hopefully you all have found something awesome out of this. Anyways, I won't waste any more of your time. Like and subscribe for more, and I'll see y'all later. Peace out.